What if I told you there was a man, thousands of years ago, who never tasted death? A man who didn't just believe in God but walked so intimately with him that God simply took him. No grave, no burial, just gone. This isn't a myth. This is the biblical account of Enoch. Forget everything you thought you knew about what it means to truly live for God. Enoch's story will shatter your preconceived notions. He lived for only 365 years, short compared to his patriarchs. Yet his life was monumentally significant. Why? Because Enoch walked with God. This wasn't a casual stroll. It wasn't a Sunday morning ritual. It was a profound, daily, unshakable friendship with the Creator of the universe. A relationship so deep, so real, that God decided to bring him home personally. No deathbed, no final breath, just translation. He was raptured. Genesis 5:24 simply states, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." What does that even mean? What kind of walk was this? What led God to do something so incredibly unique with him? It's an invitation to explore a life that defied the darkness of its age, a life so uniquely connected to the divine that it ended in a divine intervention. Are you ready to discover what that kind of walk might look like for you? Imagine a world drowning, not in water yet, but in wickedness. A society where corruption wasn't an exception but the rule, where violence was rampant, where God was largely ignored, if not openly defied. This was Enoch's world. This was the landscape he navigated every single day. Human wickedness had multiplied beyond measure. Rebellion against God was the prevailing culture. Sin ran rampant, unbridled, unchecked. It was a dark, chaotic era. And right in the middle of it, Enoch was born. He didn't just exist in this world. He chose a radically different path, while everyone else followed their own destructive desires, completely ignoring the Creator's will. Enoch made a deliberate, daily choice. He chose to walk with God. He wasn't a passive observer of his generation's moral collapse. He became a blazing beacon of righteousness, a living, breathing testament to another way. The corruption of that time was so profound that just a few generations later, God would send the great flood to cleanse the earth. But before the deluge, there was Enoch. He didn't just survive in that environment, he thrived spiritually. He didn't let the growing ungodliness contaminate his soul. The truly astounding part, he wasn't a king. He wasn't a military hero. He wasn't a political leader. He was an ordinary man, but his commitment to God, that was extraordinary. His faith, his obedience, it set him apart. It made him a living, breathing example of someone who truly knew and loved the Lord, even when no one else did. Faced with a world engulfed in darkness, Enoch chose the light. What choice are you making today in the face of your own world's shadows? You say you walk with God. But what does that really mean? For Enoch, it went far beyond a simple belief. This phrase, walked with God, defines his entire existence. He didn't just acknowledge God's existence, he lived in constant, vibrant, moment-by-moment communion with him. Every step Enoch took was guided by an unshakable faith. Every decision was fueled by a deep, burning desire to know God's will and obey it immediately. The Bible rarely uses this kind of language for anyone. Noah walked with God. Abraham too, but Enoch, he was the first. He lived 365 years. Think about that number. Perhaps it symbolizes a complete cycle, a life entirely dedicated to God. While everyone else around him chased their own fleeting desires, Enoch pursued God's voice in every detail. This walking with God wasn't a one-time spiritual high. It wasn't a fleeting burst of fervor. It was a continuous journey, a daily, intimate relationship. Can you imagine Enoch talking with God like you talk to your closest friend? Seeking his presence in every single choice, refusing to be swayed by the rampant corruption surrounding him. He didn't need physical sight to know God was there. His faith sought was sight his sight. Hebrews 11:5 confirms this. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. And he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. This is the absolute key. Enoch pleased God. His life was a living reflection of what God desires from each of us. Are you pleasing God with your walk today, or are you just going through the motions? Most people think of Enoch as just a man of profound faith. They don't realize he was also a prophet, a messenger. He didn't just live for God. He denounced God's truth to a world that desperately needed to hear it, but refused to listen. Centuries before the devastating flood, long before Moses even received the law, Enoch received a staggering revelation about humanity's future. He saw the end. In the New Testament, in the book of Jude, we get a chilling glimpse of his prophecy. It was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." Jude 1:14-15. This isn't just profound. It is direct, it is accusatory. This declaration screams that Enoch wasn't just seeking God for himself. He was a living, breathing megaphone for divine justice. He didn't just warn about the flood. His prophecy pointed to an even grander, more terrifying event, the final judgment. The day God returns with his saints to establish ultimate justice. Think about that. Enoch denounced the rampant sin around him. He saw the growing corruption, the spiritual decay. And instead of staying silent, instead of conforming, he proclaimed the raw, unvarnished truth. We don't know exactly how people reacted. But can you imagine? Most likely, just like every other prophet, he was ridiculed, he was ignored. Yet, Enoch remained firm. He wasn't seeking human applause. He was seeking God's approval. His unwavering commitment to truth alienated him from his generation. It made him a living, powerful example of faithfulness in a faithless world. Are you willing to speak truth, even when it's unpopular, even when it might cost you everything? How did he do it? How did Enoch maintain such an unshakable, profound communion with God amidst a world rotting with perversity? What was the secret to his intimate, unbroken connection with the Creator? What made Enoch, this ordinary man, so intimately linked with the divine? How did he manage to keep his faith vibrant and unwavering when everyone else was crumbling? The answer isn't complex. It lies in the sheer taut depth of his relationship with God. Enoch didn't just believe God existed. He sought him every single day, with every fiber of his being. The Bible doesn't give us a detailed diary of his daily practices. But one thing is absolutely certain: he lived a life of total, radical dependence and complete surrender to God. He must have spent hours in prayer, hours meditating on the Creator's vastness, hours in silent, focused contemplation, listening for God's voice. His communion with God wasn't some cold, dead ritual. It was a living, breathing, intense, and profoundly real relationship. His days weren't shaped by the customs of the corrupt society around him. He refused to be swept away by the toxic influences of a world that had forgotten God. Instead, he drew closer, and closer, and closer still to the Lord. His burning desire was to know God deeply. This radical connection with the divine became his identity. It became the defining characteristic that set him apart from every single person on earth. And it was precisely this intense proximity to God that led God to take him. Enoch lived on earth. Yes, but his heart already belonged to heaven. God, seeing his unwavering faithfulness, seeing his consistent, true walk, decided he would bypass death entirely. This deep, personal relationship wasn't just for Enoch. It was an example. It spanned generations. It served as a model of faith for his own family. What is the secret to your faith? Is it a casual acquaintance or a consuming passion? Does your faith die with you, or does it echo through the ages, transforming lives long after you're gone? Enoch's influence wasn't confined to his lifetime. His legacy, his walk, it directly impacted his family, and it shaped future generations. Among his direct descendants, Methuselah, the longest living man in biblical history, and Noah, the one chosen to preserve humanity during the Great Flood. Enoch's faith wasn't just personal, it overflowed. It spilled out onto everyone around him. Can you imagine him teaching his children, teaching his grandchildren, instilling in them the critical importance of seeking God, of living with uncompromising integrity, of refusing to be swept away by the world's pervasive corruption? His faithfulness was so remarkably potent that his story was recorded forever in the sacred scriptures, serving as an eternal inspiration, an unwavering beacon for all who would come after. Noah, his great-grandson, is also described in Genesis 6-9 as someone who walked with God. This is no mere coincidence. Enoch's powerful example was almost certainly passed down, generation to generation. It directly influenced Noah's character. It shaped his choices. It strengthened his resolve to obey God, even when everyone else was scoffing, building a boat when no one had ever seen rain. The ultimate proof of Enoch's impact, he was remembered. Thousands of years later, the author of Hebrews placed him squarely in the gallery of the heroes of faith, specifically highlighting that he pleased God through his faith. Hebrews 11:5-6. His testimony shouts a powerful truth. True faith doesn't die with the person, it propagates, it spreads. It echoes through the ages, it transforms lives far beyond anything we could ever imagine. What legacy are you building with your faith? Will it vanish with you, or will it echo for generations to come? The greatest, most astonishing mark of Enoch's life was that final, earth-shattering moment when God decided to take him. What exactly happened on the day of his rapture, on a seemingly ordinary day, as he walked with God, just as he did every single day? Enoch simply disappeared. There are no records of his death, no mention of a burial, no earthly end. The Bible says it directly and profoundly mysteriously. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5:24. This single verse holds one of the greatest, most intriguing mysteries of the entire Bible. What exactly transpired? What was that moment like? Did he realize he was being taken? Did he feel a shift? The only certainty we possess is this: he did not experience death. He was translated. He was raptured, taken by God in a way that was utterly unique and incredibly special. Just like Elijah, centuries later, who was taken to heaven in a whirlwind of fire, Enoch left this world without enduring the suffering of death. The significance of this event extends far beyond a simple vanishing act. Enoch's rapture is a powerful, undeniable symbol of the reward of profound faith. He lived so intimately with God that in the end, he was taken directly to be with him. This astonishing fact also points to a future reality, the rapture of the church, mentioned in the New Testament, a day when the faithful will be removed from the earth to meet the Lord in the air. For those who knew Enoch personally, his departure must have been utterly shocking. A man gone, without explanation, without a trace, without a body to bury. Imagine the confusion, the questions. What would you do if your closest friend just vanished? What do you think the people around him thought? How did his absence impact those who were left behind, scratching their heads, wondering? Imagine his family, his friends. One day he was there, no signs of struggle, no illness, no farewell. He didn't die like everyone else. He didn't vanish, fought. They must have searched. Did his family and friends scour the fields, climb the mountains, calling his name, getting no answer? How do you explain something so utterly extraordinary? For those who didn't know God, his absence must have been an unsolvable enigma, a mystery with no possible solution. But those who understood his profound communion with God, they might have had a profoundly different perception. They knew Enoch didn't truly belong to this world anyway. His heart was already anchored in heaven, even before his departure. Perhaps his family understood. Perhaps they realized that God himself had taken him, a breathtaking confirmation of everything he preached, everything he lived. Enoch's absence left a silence that spoke louder than any sermon. He was a living, breathing sign of God's power, of God's righteousness. His translation proved that God doesn't just judge humanity. He also profoundly rewards those who walk with him. Centuries later, this event would continue to echo through the corridors of faith. It was not forgotten. On the contrary, his story was powerfully reaffirmed in the New Testament, showing that he wasn't just a character from a distant past, but an eternal, living model of faith. How will your life speak when you are no longer here? Why does the New Testament keep bringing up this ancient ghost? Though Enoch's story is told in only a few short verses in the Old Testament, his impact utterly transcended generations. It reached all the way into the New Testament. His name appears in the letters of the apostles, not as a footnote, but as an unquestionable example of faith, of profound communion with God. In the book of Hebrews, he is mentioned directly in that powerful gallery of heroes of faith. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. Hebrews 11:5. This passage isn't just a historical note. It's a powerful confirmation that Enoch's life was marked by an extraordinary, unwavering, radical faith. He wasn't raptured because he was some perfect, sinless human being. He wasn't taken because he performed great human deeds. He was taken because he pleased God through faith. God. This reinforces a powerful, liberating truth. What God truly values isn't titles. It isn't material achievements. It isn't even outward works. What God values is a heart utterly, totally surrendered to him. And as we saw earlier, Jude also mentions Enoch. He isn't just a man who walked with God. He is a God prophet, who announced divine judgment. This reveals that his message wasn't confined to his own time. It pointed to future, monumental events. The New Testament doesn't just nod to Enoch. It highlights him as a profound model for all believers. His life proves that true faith isn't just a mental assent that God exists. It is about living in full, active communion with him, to the point of being taken into eternity without even passing through death. What does the New Testament say about your faith? Is it active? Is it pleasing to God? So after all this, an inevitable question confronts us. What can Sod learn from Enoch? How can his ancient story transform your tide way of living today? Enoch's story is not just some dusty, ancient account from forgotten times. It is a living, breathing, urgent call to every single one of us. His life shouts this truth: walking with God is not some distant, impossible ideal. It's not reserved for super saints. It is a daily, intentional choice that has the power to utterly transform your destiny. The first great lesson Enoch leaves us is crystal clear. Faith isn't just believing. It is living caught in intimate communion with God. He didn't just believe God was there, he sought him personally. Deeply, this profound relationship made him an utterly unique example, so unique that God took him home directly. This challenges Bedot not to settle for a superficial faith. Not a faith that just scratches the surface, but a faith that truly powerfully, consistently draws you closer to the Creator. Another powerful lesson: it is absolutely possible to live for God, even when times are incredibly difficult. Enoch wasn't surrounded by a just society. He wasn't in a pious community. On the contrary, he lived in a corrupt, decaying world, a world that would soon face a global flood. Yet, he chose to be different. He chose holiness. He chose to stand apart. This shows us that holiness doesn't depend on your environment. It depends on your unwavering decision to seek God sincerely. Additionally, Enoch reminds us that God rewards those who seek him. His rapture was more than a disappearance. It was a clear, undeniable sign that God sees, God honors, God rewards those who truly live for him. This also powerfully points to the future rapture of the church, a day when the faithful will be removed from the earth to meet the Lord. Finally, and perhaps Enoch's greatest message, is this: there is nothing, absolutely nothing, more important than walking with God. Riches fade, power crumbles. Human recognition is fleeting, but a life lived in deep, daily communion with God, that leads to eternity. Enoch walked with God, and in the end, God took him to himself. This can also be God your taught destiny. This can be Sati your reward. If you choose, if you decide, right now, to walk the same path. What choice will you make today? Will you just exist, or will you truly walk with God?